Hi everybody, my name is Dr. Funman and I'm your lecturer for this course again. We'll talk about the element cycles, and this is the last part of this topic, element cycles. We'll go through the nutrients enrichment, and we'll spend some time to see what the strategies in tackling the nutrients enrichment. And this takes a very diverse approach here. Now, the approaches can vary, depends on the cost for the same level of nutrients reduction. So some approaches are cheaper than others, but it's all about creating a habitat for wildlife. Now, ultimately, the approaches embraced depends on the major source of nutrients, right? For a given waterway, and along with the economic considerations here. Without the money or without the resources to finance these strategies here, it will not work here, right? So it all boils down to money first, right? Not just planning. Now let's look at some approaches to control nutrient pollution. So some of these examples of the approaches to control nutrients um, pollutions include reducing the fertilizers used on farms and lawns here. How would a layman know how much fertilizers to put in? Does the person just spam a lot to increase plant growth, or add a bit inadequately so that you don't waste it, and then but the plant requires more nutrients to grow, right? How do you regulate this amount of fertilizers here, right? We give some advice to ration out, uh, also look at the percentage of the phosphorus content in the fertilizers from different brands here. Now, the other approach is also the changing the timing of fertilizers applications to minimize rainy season runoff here. So if there are locations where it traps water here, or there it doesn't trap water, there's a high likelihood of a runoff. That means, right, when you put fertilizers there, is not able to be absorbed by the soil, and it'll be washed away. So what it means is a waste of resource and money there. But people think that, oh, I put some fertilizers, the plant will grow. But what they do not realize is, let's say Singapore, we have a lot of precipitations, right? Oh, you add fertilizers, you dissolve in water, but before it sifts into the soil, the deep soil, and it get washed off. So what you get is really the soil is not enriched by the nutrients. Now, next thing is also to more effectively managing the manure applications of the farmlands to reduce the nutrients runoff here. So not just the synthetic man-made fertilizers, but also the animal manure, right? The waste, the feces. Now this takes place more in the farmland, maybe like Lim Chu Kang area, where we have the chicken farms and the other farms. Um, well, for this part, let's say in the farmland, right? You have a let's say a hectare of farm here, right? You can't just force your chicken to be scattered equally, right? They may just have a random movement together and pass the motions here. So how are you able to control that the nutrients coming from the manure are scattered more evenly, right? So that it's not highly concentrated in certain area here. And what if the part that's highly concentrated is where the site is more prone to the runoff washed by the rain or the water here, right? Then that means the whole farmland is not really enriched to what the farmer needs. So this requires sampling, and sampling means, right, you sample different parts of the soil here, and then you send it for the lab testing, and that will be a separate lecture, maybe not in this course, in a CM3291 here, under the analytical chemistry course here. But I'm just giving an overview that you need to think about some of these measures to minimize the nutrients pollutions. Now, the other thing we talk about is how to plant and maintain vegetation buffers around the streams, right, to that traps nutrients and sediments runoff here. So we can be strategic in just planting, not just okay, plant every like 5 meter interval here, but there might be places where there's more erosions due to the different kinds of rocks present here. If you have granite, the rocks are super hard here. That means the plant is a bit hard for them to grow deeper, which means that the water as well is hard to there'll be more runoff in the area. For instance, along the Bukit Timah Road here, that's why the MRT lines, it took a delay, a couple more years to drill, because it's all granite rocks. It's very hard here. So likewise, vis-a-vis example, if the ground, the rocks are made up of hard rocks, right? Then you have more likely surface runoff. So do you try to put more plants there so that you can regulate the uptake of the nutrients? This is a strategy to apply. Now, the another method is to use artificial wetlands to filter stormwater and farm runoff here. Which means, what are these artificial wetlands. So we can build dikes to channel and collect water. We call it the pool of detention, detention of water here. So we could build like a small reservoir, right, a container there that traps water here, and then it flows back to the site here, where it's unable to retain water due to the nature of the topography. Another method is to restore the nutrients absorbing wetland along the waterway. So how to restore it? So you might have a you know that in the wetland, right, it's going to be drained out, right, for the along this waterway. But you can build a conduit, right, to make it go back to its original wetland, so they circulated and not just wasted to the ocean. Another strategy is to improve technologies in the sewage plants to enhance the nitrogen and phosphorus capture here. So we use small technology. Some examples in PUB Singapore here. I give you a link. You can read a bit more on sampling at different parts of the water runway to see where there's a sudden dip in the concentration of nitrogen and phosphorus. Because we know that there's a dip, right, that means that must be the amount of these nutrients must be absorbed by certain species near the site, right? Or there might be a side channel that diluted the amount of these nutrients in the runoff. So, but how can we use technology to help us? We can't have the PUB person to always go down and sample different sites here, right? It's very laborious. Could we have a little robot there that give you a reading to sample amount of nitrogen and phosphorus at different points of the water runoff, right? Then you can send this data to the PUB headquarters and just analyze from the office. Now next, we could also restore the frequently flooded lands that reduce runoff here, right? So if there's certain part of land that's always flooded, the first thing I think of is Orchard Road. Orchard Road used to be outside the Wendy's, but now it's Shake Shack. The area used to be flooded. What happens is the government put in some money to build some little dam so that there will be a more regulated water flow to prevent flash flooding, right? So likewise, in a farmland or in the open, right, how can we restore the flooded lands to reduce runoff here, right? We can have human interventions. If the land is prone to dance, right? That means, right, this is there's a concave area that collects water here. Could we build more side channels so that it doesn't trap water, right? Or if the area is convex, you want water to be there but it's not retained, can we build a little wall around it so that you can regulate the amount of water, right, and to reduce surface runoff? Because ultimately this pertains to nutrients retentions, right, and you do not want to have an over concentration of the nutrients in a particular site here, right? Couple last points here. One is to upgrade the stormwater system here, right? You can see from this picture from PUB, and how to capture runoff from the roads and parking lots here. So this pertains more of the human infrastructures in the buildings, right? Because the rain can go into commercialized buildings as well here, right? So do you want to just let this water interact with the water that is used to grow plantations? I suppose not, right? Because you have a little bit of acid rain and you run it through the parking lot on the road here, the surface asphalt, even though it's insoluble in the water here, right? Because it contains all these kind of organic species, right? Just hydrocarbons. You might not want to let it mix with those that's enriched with nutrients, right? So there's a filtration system and purification system. In this picture, you see more. And then one of the last strategies to regulate the nutrients enrichment is to reduce the fossil fuels combustion, right? So that we can decrease the atmospheric inputs of nitrogen to the waterway. Why would fossil fuels combustion, right, increase the amount of nitrogen to the waterway here? Because in the engines of the automobiles here is a very high temperature due to a very exothermic combustion of hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons when you have a bond breaking. So I just broke a carbon-carbon bond. I broke a carbon-carbon bond, right? So the reaction here is very exothermic and is high temperature. So when the engine collects air, air consists of 79% nitrogen and 21% oxygen here. The N2, remember the nitrogen cycle here, although it's a triple bond with high activation energy, but inside the engine is contained with high pressure, is able to break into nitrogen radicals and quickly forms oxides of nitrogen here. So now you are producing compounds of nitrogen just from the very stable inert N2, right? So when you have fossil fuels combustion, it also generates a lot of nitrogen species from the N2 here, right? And this could go to the waterway. Is it how you want to regulate the amount of nutrients in the element cycle? So give some thoughts into it. So I've gone through a few of these approaches in this last segment on the nutrients enrichment, and this sums up the end of the presentation. I thank you very much for this topic on the element cycles. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this class. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.